Chess, a game of black and white squares, kings and queens, pawns and knights. Simple at first glance, yet endlessly complex. For centuries, it captivated the world as the ultimate contest of minds. Napoleon played chess. So did Benjamin Franklin. Emperors, philosophers, generals, all drawn to this battlefield of 64 squares, where victory comes not from strength, but from thought alone. And within this battlefield, the pieces themselves have meaning. The soldier advances with quiet determination. The knight moves with cunning, striking from unexpected angles. The queen embodies power without restraint. And the king, fragile, slow, vulnerable, survives only through the protection of others. In every match, the board becomes a reflection of human nature, ambition, sacrifice, downfall, triumph. And because of this, chess became more than just a game. It became a symbol, a way to measure intellect, to test the limits of patience, foresight, and reason itself, where every match is a trial, and even the smallest mistake could unravel hours of careful thought. To outwit your opponent was to prove something, not only to them, but most of all, to yourself. And for centuries, this trial belonged only to human minds, memory, imagination, strategy, and willpower. The game was the purest expression of what it meant to think. But in the 1700s, something changed. In an age lit by candlelight, when salons and coffee houses buzzed with the talk of philosophy and science, carriages rattled down cobblestone streets, and the most intricate machines were music boxes, clocks, and little figures that jerked to life when wound with a key. A new kind of player emerged, one that was not human at all. It wore a turban, Ottoman robes draped across its wooden frame. Seated before the chessboard, it lifted its arm and moved a piece. Neither a trick nor a puppet, but a machine that could play chess and win. They called it a pawn. They called it an automaton. They called it the mechanical Turk. To some, it was a marvel of engineering. To others, something unsettling, maybe even frightening, because this was no ordinary curiosity. This was a robot in the 1700s. The year was 1769. At the court of Empress Maria Theresa in Vienna, a young official named Wolfgang von Kempelen was about to make a promise that would change his life. Von Kempelen wasn't a chess master. He wasn't even an engineer. He was a civil servant in the Habsburg court, a man of letters and administration, dealing with petitions, reports, and the machinery of the empire. Tall and broad shouldered, with a long face framed by the powdered wig of court fashion, Campbell carried himself with the formality expected of an imperial official. But in 1769, at 35 years old, he wanted to be more than just a bureaucrat. Outside the court, he dabbled in mechanics and design, sketching out devices that ranged from practical machines to whimsical contraptions. He had a mind that was always chasing the next idea, always looking for a way to impress, to prove that human ingenuity could rival even the mysteries of nature. He was as much a showman as a thinker, someone who understood that in the world of courts and palaces, spectacle mattered. So, when von Kempelen stood in front of the Empress, watching a French illusionist perform tricks that left the audience gasping, he saw an opportunity. To everyone else, the magician was impressive. To von Kempel, he was a challenge. With full confidence, he declared to the Empress that he would create something far more impressive. In doing so, von Kempelen set himself a task to build a chess playing machine, not just a clever toy, not just a puzzle of gears and levers, but a creation that would astonish the world. A machine that could think itself. Perhaps it was pride that drove him. Perhaps it was the need to prove himself before the Empress, Maria Theresa, one of the most powerful rulers in Europe. Some even suggest he wanted to impress her personally, to win her admiration, to show that his mind could conjure wonders as dazzling as any court magician. And for von Kempel, this was going to be more than just an idle project. It was a chance to secure his place at the court, to gain favor in the Empress's eyes, and to demonstrate that Austria could stand at the very forefront of science, art, and invention. The Turk would be the first robot the world had ever seen. Von Kempel withdrew into his workshop, and for months he worked in secrecy. Sketches filled his desk, diagrams of gears, levers, sliding panels, and concealed compartments. And piece by piece, his vision began to take shape. At its heart was a large wooden cabinet, nearly 4 feet long, 3 feet deep, and 2.5 feet high. The cabinet was divided into sections, each fronted with ornate doors and brass fittings. These could be opened to reveal a maze of gleaming brass gears, rods, and clockwork. A complex machine indeed. On top of the cabinet sat the chessboard, a standard 64 squares of black and white. Above it, seated, as if presiding over the game, was the figure itself, the Turk, carved from wood and painted with unsettling realism. The figure was dressed in heavy Ottoman robes, its broad shoulders draped in a long flowing coat. A white turban crowned its head, and beneath it, dark, piercing eyes stared out over the board. The face was stern, almost severe, a neatly painted moustache curling over thin lips that seemed frozen mid thought. The styling was no accident. In the 18th century Europe, the Orient was seen as mysterious and exotic, and von Kempel played into that fascination deliberately. And the Turk's posture gave it a presence all its own, upright and commanding. It leaned ever so slightly forward, as though studying its opponent. Its right arm, jointed and mechanical, rested at the ready, capable of rising, reaching, and moving a piece with slow, deliberate precision. When it shifted, it did so not with the clumsy jerk of a puppet, but with a measured steadiness that felt disturbingly human. For spectators in the 18th century, this was no toy soldier or clockwork doll. It was something far more unsettling, a machine that watched you as much as you watched it. The year was 1770, Vienna. Time came for Wolfgang von Kempelen to deliver what he had promised to the Empress Maria Theresa, something to rival the wonders of her court. And what he unveiled was no mere parlor trick, a wooden cabinet, a chessboard, and a figure in Ottoman robes that seemed to be intelligent of its own. The room fell into a hush as von Kempelen gestured towards his creation. With deliberate care, he opened each of the cabinet's doors, one after another, revealing glittering brass cogs, rods, and empty compartments. Courtiers craned their necks to peer inside. Nothing. No secret accomplice, no hidden machinery. Everything seemed perfect. Maybe a little too perfect. And when von Kempel swung the final panel closed, anticipation in the hall had reached a fever pitch. And then the figure stirred. The Turk's head tilted slightly, as though reading its opponent. The right arm, jointed and mechanical, rose from its resting place and moved towards the board. The fingers, carved with unsettling precision, closed around a pawn and pushed it forward. The motion was not stiff, not puppet like. It was measured, deliberate, human. Gasps escaped from the audience. Some clutched at their fans or leaned forward in disbelief. Others crossed themselves, whispering of witchcraft. A machine, a machine that played chess, and it did not play poorly. Piece after piece, the Turk responded with uncanny precision, countering strategies, setting traps, and claiming victories. Its wooden face betrayed no thought, no calculation, and yet, with each move, it seemed to know. The courtiers who had laughed at von Kempelen's promise now sat in uneasy silence. Here was a challenge to reason itself, a figure that impossibly seemed to think. By the end of that evening at the Schönbrunn Palace, the Empress herself was delighted, and the Turk had done more than entertain. It had unsettled, it had astonished, and the news of this fascinating figure spread far beyond Vienna's gilded halls. And soon the machine would leave the palace and move on to the wider stage of the whole world, where its opponents would not be anonymous courtiers, but some of the greatest names in history. From Vienna, the Turk soon began its march across the whole world. Everywhere it went, crowds gathered. Nobles, scholars, even future legends, all eager to test their wits against the machine in the turban. In 1783, a famous challenger sat across from the robed figure, Benjamin Franklin. Then serving as American ambassador, the Turk outplayed him, calmly claiming victory. Franklin, fascinated, left with more admiration than frustration, recognizing wonder when he saw it. Years later, the Turk faced Napoleon himself. But the emperor couldn't resist mischief. On his first move, he broke the rules. The Turk politely reset his piece. Napoleon tried again, another illegal move. This time, the Turk lifted the piece off the board entirely. A third attempt, and with a sudden sweep of its wooden arm, the machine knocked every piece to the floor. Laughter broke out, and even Napoleon joined in. But when they restarted the game properly, the joke was on him. In 19 moves, the Emperor was defeated. In London, mathematician Charles Babbage, the same man who would later come up with the first computer, sat down to play. He lost. He tried again. He lost again. But the encounter planted an idea. Could a machine one day truly calculate and think on its own? From emperors to investors, from philosophers to grandmasters, the wooden figure in Ottoman robes left its mark on every mind it faced. And yet, the longer it traveled, the more people began to ask a dangerous question. How could such a thing be possible? For decades, the Turk traveled across Europe and America, leaving behind astonished crowds and humble challengers. Many believed it was genuine, proof that human ingenuity had already created artificial intelligence centuries before its time. Others suspected trickery. One of the earliest skeptics was none other than Edgar Allan Poe. In 1836, after watching the Automaton perform in Richmond, Virginia, Poe published an essay titled Miles's Chess Player. He dissected the show step by step, arguing that the machine must contain a man concealed within its cabinet. To him, it wasn't just a trick, it was deception dressed up as science. And Poe was right. The gears and rods inside the Turk were mostly theatrical, props to impress audiences when the panels were opened. The secret was space, clever sliding partitions and false backdrops allowed a chess master to slip into position, hidden from sight. From there, using system of levers and magnets beneath the board, he could see his opponent's moves and guide the Turk's wooden hand with remarkable precision. And over the years, the name of these hidden operators came to light. Masters like Johann Allgaier, Jacques Moret, and William Schlumberger. Their skill gave the Turk its strength, while von Kempel's engineering gave it its mystique. The truth did not diminish its fame, though. Even once many knew the truth, the fascination seemed to never die. For audiences in the 18th and the 19th centuries, the Turk had shown a glimpse of something both thrilling and terrifying, the possibility of a machine that could outthink us. But in the end, it wasn't skeptics or scandal that brought down the automaton, but fire. In 1854, at the Chinese Museum in Philadelphia, flames consumed the Turk. The cabinet, the gears, the figure in its robes, all reduced to ash. The illusion was gone, but its legacy remained. The Turk may never have been a true thinking machine, yet it left the world wondering if one day such a thing could exist. And in that sense, Perhaps the greatest hoax of the 18th century was also the first spark of the digital age.